So anyway, so the 88 is really an important callback to me of the message I heard on the 212, which is that people need simple, they need robust, they need feel durable. You read people online, they're like, oh, why would I pay $3.3 million for R88? And the answer is because today you can't get anything even close to this for three anything. It's 4.8, 4.9, 5.0. There's other companies that have cut inspection down, reduced inspection. We go the other way. We're constantly investing in more inspection, faster inspection.
Hey, welcome back to the Aerospace Executive Podcast. I've been excited for this one for a couple of weeks. I'm really happy to have David Smith with me. David is the president and CEO of Robinson Helicopter, which is doing some amazing things. And moving forward, new introduction of the R88 helicopter, the R66 a couple of years ago. They've made some investments in drone technology with Ascent Aerosystems, and just a lot of fun to watch all the progress. So, David, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks, Craig.
Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, looking forward to chatting.
So lots of exciting stuff. Let's talk about. So you guys are about 50 years old. Robinson's about 50 years old now, and the beauty of it is the original designs. The beauty of the original designs were in their simplicity, and now you guys you're starting to technology's moving forward, and you guys are really doing a good job capturing it. How many helicopters in operation now?
10,500 flying, and this year we'll cross over 14,000 built. With the fleet leader, the largest number of aircraft is the R44 family, which this year passes the Jet Ranger family of product as the most produced civilian helicopter in history.
And how many is that?
It'll be just over 8,000, and most of those are still in use today. The 44 is the workhorse aircraft. It's also used in a lot of private, owner flown type, use cases as well. So it's a really neat multi-mission aircraft that kind of cracked open vertical lift for folks to buy and build a business around. I think that's one of my favorite parts of our business is that so many people can build a small business around our aircraft and feed their families and show people the world.
It's great. I mean, you've got a phenomenal background too. A couple, Bell Helicopter, strong, phenomenal background from MIT, Bell Helicopter, engineering design. What drew you over to Robinson?
Well, so first thing is, even in school, I wasn't the best engineer, so I learned that pretty quick. MIT is a great place to be humbled. I'll say that the world's engineers are incredible, and they always have the pick of the litter of folks all over the globe. But what that got me exposed to pretty quickly was that my value add to the world was never going to be being the best and most ingenious designer of a thing. Instead, I could see pretty quickly in school that people needed technical leadership, the ability to take technical linguist. Actually, is one of the words I tell people is that like the language of product development is about 50 or 60 technical jargon-filled domains. You're talking from power plants to drivetrains to electrical systems. They're all different jargon, different things you need to learn to translate things across boundaries and interfaces. And so, when I got exposed to that in my first early years at Bell, I was in new product development in their advanced design site, XWorks at the time they called it. And we did prototypes. And so I got real quick exposed to the practicals of design into making things. And that got me into new product development in the clean sheet design side. So I worked Bell 525 in the earliest years. That was 17 years ago. Think about how long those projects take to get certified. But I was in, the first 10 group of folks on that program. And at that point, you can see that, concepts come together in ways where you're maturing things at different rates, right? So gearboxes have to be done pretty early because they have long lead. And then, you certainly select an engine early. And those things all have interfaces that you got to manage throughout the design process. Well, that experience, I was blessed. I walked in at like the perfect times for a bunch of things. Within 6 months of me joining, they won ARH program. I got rolled into ARH. When I left ARH and it was canceled, the business was starting up 525 at that time. And unfortunately, right after that, the 2008 kind of, the world started having a unique financial crisis. But that got me exposed to a whole bunch of, business and strategy things that I think broadened my perspective in a way that as long as, I was listening and I had great mentors, really some phenomenal mentors in the industry. Linda O'Brien, who's probably will eventually listen to this. She's Lockheed Martin executive, but she was a phenomenal mentor that helped make a lot of these things, put these things in perspective. And then that got me the opportunity at a really young age. I'm talking, I was probably 20 years younger than the other chief engineers on products at Bell, was able to be the chief engineer for the Bell 505. And that's what introduced me to Robinson.
Wow.
Within the first few months, it was a simple target. Don't let Robinson build an R88 and eat our lunch in the 407 and on and on and on. And obviously we saw that coming now 12 years ago or so. And so I got on that program, helped to start up a really unique culture. But the main thing was to study the enemy really well. And so we had a Robinson R66, one of the first ones built, and brought it in, flew it, took it apart, understood it. And then we sent people to the factory here. Robinson was generous to let people take tours, the competitors take tours. So people actually walked the factory, came back and were like, man, they do things so different. So really instantly in that role, I could see that Robinson had a unique recipe, and that kept me attached to their sort of ideas and concepts. And it spoke deeply to me, even at that early stage, that I watched so much waste in big businesses, so much challenge with global offshoring of important high precision work that in the end you end up reworking when it comes back into the US or into the Canadian site for Bell, for example. So I felt like these things were right. I mean, like Frank was right that these things should be done locally, where you can have your eyes on it and you can teach people, from scratch. You can build good habits from the beginning. So that was all part of the foundation. And then years later, when I was running a simulator business, I had a great sales leader who had a relationship with folks here at the factory and wanted to sell sims to them. So I came and visited. When they found out I was the 505 chief engineer, they were like, oh, I'm not going to buy your sims, but I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. And then they followed up. Our recently passed VP of engineering, he would message me about every 6 months. He was like, hey, we'd really love you to come out. Please come work with us. And so he just never gave up. And when later in my career, when the pandemic kind of wiped out our sim business and, the opportunity to look again at where I wanted to be, 20 years later, this came up. And it was such a great timing opportunity. It's such a great opportunity for us to take what I had learned from the 505 experience and roll it into this business. And I mean, it's the dream job for sure.
I can imagine so. So all right, so let's move on. Let's move on. You mentioned something, don't let them build the R88.
Right. How poetic it is, right?
And now here you are, you're building the R88. So your new announcement a couple months ago. Talk about the R88. And look, I remember when the oil market crashed, 10 years ago. Everybody saw, the day of the helicopter is gone. The offshore helicopter, business is gone, and a lot of consolidation. And here we are 10 years later.
It's a real problem. But if you consider that some companies have only products that serve oil and gas, that really is a problem for them. But what I love about Robinson's, portfolio is, we build today three product lines, still build them all. So there's no product that we've ever sunsetted. And that gives us this flexibility to say, parts are always available. We're always making components, and in every generation of mechanics and engineers and technicians in our factory, they learn 22, 44, 66, they build them all. So I think that's a great foundation. But what the R88 really goes after is something I learned in my very first exposure to customers in the industry. I went to a maintenance training course when I was at Bell as an engineer, like a happy hour after their maintenance course. And these gentlemen from South Africa came and they said, they grabbed me. I was just a random young guy, and he said, why did you guys stop making the 212? Okay, so they were like, we love that aircraft. And they had 212s and 230s. And they said, those are the best aircraft we have. Everything else leaks and fails and is grounded and all these things. And they said, we love the 212 and the 230. They love those aircraft. And so they made the argument really strongly that simple is better. Even at that early age, that made an impact on me. And then later, when I was exposed to Robinson up close, I could see that was part of what made Frank approach things the way he did, was to remove complexity as the first prime directive. And actually, it mirrors very closely with like Tesla's concepts of how they've really tried to make their products simpler and simpler. And obviously, you make them feature rich in other ways. You don't make them feature rich with actuators and complexity and redundancy and all that. You make them, robust through simplicity first, and then feature rich and software in his case. But in our case, we make it feature rich in things that are small, like, ease of maintenance, ease of viewing things. One of the best examples I point to people is we put these LED lights to illuminate the sight gauges. And like in bigger aircraft, much larger aircraft, they don't have that stuff. And you're like, well, that's a small cost that Robinson added to a product that made customers' lives easier. And I think that's a really clever, simple, not terribly expensive, but that's the kind of stuff we like to do. So anyway, so the 88 is really an important callback to me of the message I heard on the 212, which is that people need simple, they need robust, they need feel durable, so that they don't have to think, is this aircraft going to start today, or do I have some latent maintenance thing I'm going to find in the pre-flight that keeps me on the ground? These aircraft need to be workhorses and need to be dependable pickup trucks, and so that's the origin from my perspective. And Robinson was considering this even back when Frank started just after the 44. He wanted to build a utility heavy lifter, but he felt like he needed to start with a turbine. And so the closer putt was to build a 66 and then use that as the foundation for an 88 later.
Now look, obviously it's not inexpensive to bring a new product to market. Design, build, certification, et cetera. Was it a long conversation to make the decision, or did you guys just kind of say, hey, look, we've already got the experience. We know we can do this, and here's the market?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things I love about being a private company versus public is I remember being buried in business cases. I remember doing the business cases for the 525, for example. And like when you do it, you're totally wrong. I mean, the business cases for that were 17 years ago's economics and time and all. So it honestly was a waste of our resources at that point in that previous life. So to me, I look at this as we are a helicopter company. There is a market need, and one that I think we're uniquely qualified to fit from, the vertical integration, the fact that we have such heavy command of aftermarket and overhaul of our parts, helping to keep operating costs lower and quality high. I think those elements they are countercultural, honestly, to the rest of the industry who's sourced everything out and, globalized very heavily. It gives us this foundation to say, well, we can go after this market need. And it doesn't cost. I mean, people will tell you these are $1 billion programs. They're not going to be $1 billion for us because the way we run these things, one is we've got resources that are already in the payroll. We staffed up a little bit, decent amount of engineers added. But my engineers, my product support folks, my operations and manufacturing folks, there is bandwidth within the team to take on this new project and grow it. And then that's the engine that's going to drive us into the next decade. It could be bigger than all of our previous work that we've ever done because it's such a large revenue generator. But honestly, we're focused on, we have so many hours in the day. There's a real market need with a big opportunity. And the inflection point, I think, is where we're at in the industry, where these other products that serve these roles today are becoming increasingly difficult to support cost and just part availability. So we believe that a new product needs to come into this market and go right after where, the Hueys support today, the 212 support today, the A-Star is a really strong player today. But all those products, can you imagine their OEMs designing a new version of that? Not really, because they mostly design extremely high dollar advanced carbon fiber twins with, all the complexity of integrated avionics that, we want to go against the grain on that and deliver something that's of value and robust and simple.
Who do you think the customer for the R88 during your cases? Who's the targeted customers? Obviously, you've got a little offshore, you've got EMS, which is growing, and
U.S. EMS and overseas EMS. European EMS probably not. They like twins a lot. We'll try to convince them otherwise, but for a long time, I doubt we'll crack the European EMS market. But and I think the utility market is the biggest one where there's a lot of folks needing for firefighting, for infrastructure construction, and that's in the U.S. That's also in developing economies. There's a tremendous amount of investment that's going to occur in Africa and India, places that even in China, where they today are using a mix of our other aircraft and some unmanned aircraft as well. I think we bring huge tools for these missions of tomorrow. So I think utility is going to be a big part of it. Probably the biggest single mission will be utility. But tourism has approached this as well. That said that the cost to operate the current market leaders has crossed over, or is crossing over gradually these next 2 or 3 years, where they say that the customers won't pay, or they see a dramatic fall off in number of customers they'll pay, several $100s for a 15-minute flight. So I think we're trying to give both more seat capacity for missions where that's acceptable, and we're trying to give a lower operating cost than the market leaders, so they have a few different ways to approach their business model, and so tourism will be quite good. And we mentioned the same thing. Air medical in some parts of the world hasn't even taken off yet, so we need to establish the rules of the road for India and developing economies. Air medical capabilities, and I think the 88 will play a big role in that. That's part of the trade space here too.
Well, I got to think even in the U.S. where air medical, the cost pressures on the air medical providers are getting, it's thin. It's a hard business.
They were some of our biggest meetings during Verticon. I mean, we intentionally, when we announced the product, I've been to too many of these where we do a signing ceremony for 100 ships, and then the customer in the end only takes 10 or 20 of them. So I didn't want to overwhelm in the classic kind of industry way of let's get these big marquee names to sign contracts that end up not turning into real deals. We have a dealer network, and we said we want the dealers to be the lead here. And so we engaged the dealers, and we sold a bunch of them already through the dealer network. Now is the time to talk with these larger operators, but we're going to be measured in that. So the air medical folks we spoke with during the show, all the big ones, we'll sell them. I'll say small fleets to start. We'll say, let's try this out. Let's show you what we can do, because most of them only distantly remember Robinson from their training. They haven't operated a Robinson in their adult careers. And so I think for the most part, we know we have some things to show them. And I'm confident, because this is the try it before you buy it kind of thing. I'm confident giving these customers, 10 aircraft, and they'll start to see why they shouldn't even buy the other ones, and they should sell them. And I suspect that will be, taking place over the next 10 years. So.
What's your price point on the 88? I mean, obviously different configurations, different prices. But
it's super transparent. So all of our pricing for other products we post online, down to the nuts, bolts, rivets, every single spare part and everything we sell. So we're super transparent, way different than everybody else. But the intent here is the market today for a new aircraft in the 407 A-star category is around 5 million, 4.7 to 5.0, depending upon what you trick it out with. That's kind of a basic ship. Doesn't include like IFR kit, doesn't include some of the missionized kit, that kind of stuff. So just an aircraft with seats. We are 3.3 million. So our intent is to be in that kind of separation. So we are more than $1 million of separation between us and the next guy. And we offer more seats. We offer more performance. We offer more useful load. We want to make it so difficult that used aircraft are hard to justify. And I mean, we have the economics to do that. Our business allows that. And so I think people are underestimating the disruptive nature of that. And we've had a lot of podcasts, and very few people dig on that question, because you read people online, they're like, oh, why would I pay $3.3 million for R88? And the answer is because today you can't get anything even close to this for anything. It's 4.8, 4.9, 5.0, 5.2. And so, this is not even a question. And we also think that when you really get down to it, there's a lot of folks buying twins because that's the available product that offers the useful load they need. They don't necessarily care about having two engines. Mm-hmm. And there's some examples of that where people are de-engineing twins. They have the Eagle single that they've done where people, really, they don't want the twin. I mean, they would rather have a single. And in a world where people care about emissions, they care about, the overall operating cost, a single is quite good. So that's why we think this is going to be super disruptive at this price. And it will escalate over time. That's one thing people ask too, is our goal is to keep the wedge at least as good as that, and percentage wise, try to grow it, try to make it even harder for the other guys. But I think we will see price increases annually up to the first delivery, but it'll be small. We generally don't have huge escalations because we control so much. Yeah,
it's interesting. That second engine, it's expensive. It's expensive to overhaul the turbine.
Yes. And the shortages too. Like people don't realize. I mean, the industry overall, from commercial down to small turbines and APUs, they're facing shortages of every component that feeds a modern turbine engine. And so that is it's a constant pressure on us that we think, I definitely don't want to have the number of aircraft I can deliver. So I would rather keep one engine on. And I do think there are missions that need twins, long distance oil and gas and over water type flying, but we don't serve those missions. And so nearly everything is flying, over land at some points, or short duration over water, where really a highly reliable turbine, it doesn't have that significant risk. Our R66 fleet has gone 2 million flight hours with no failures, and that's pretty darn good. And I'd say, part of that is just the way we design it. Part of that's the simplicity of a single. There's less things that can go wrong in the stack up. So modern turbines are very, very strong.
Let's talk about, before we came on, you guys talked about kind of the operating culture of Robinson, which I really like. Talk about, you make a lot of your own components. What components do you not make?
So there's a couple things we can't easily make here in California or in Los Angeles. Bonded structures like our fiberglass secondary structures, the nose and the roof are both fiberglass structures, and our doors are fiberglass bonded structure as well. Those are difficult to make in LA because of emissions requirements. So we have a partner that we've worked with for a really long time that say 50, almost the full company's history, that makes those for us not too far away, and they truck those over. So they make those components. We also have a couple of handful of things inside the gearbox that we don't make. Bearings, for example, we don't make. Seals, especially seals, those kinds of things we don't make. But engines and avionics. And then more interestingly, the thing that kind of I think is a unique secret sauce to us is, we work very hard to find if there's a component that exists in the world, industrial supply chain, automotive supply chain, some sort of specialty equipment. We buy starter parts out of some of those chains, and then we both modify them for aerospace purposes. There's a lot of examples of that. The big fan that we have for the R44 cooling system is a giant steel wheel, has to replicate the weight of a prop from the old Lycoming, original CERT days. That prop weight is a massive steel wagon wheel for us. And so we start with an industrial part, modify it, precision drill it, precision structurally weld it better. And then we get it adapted and fit for purpose in aerospace with, a clutch system built into it and all. All that is done on site. And so we bring in raw material, castings, forgings, sheet metal, bar, plate, and we machine it in one of the largest machine shops in Southern California here in our second building. And then those components are ruthlessly inspected, I tell people, because when you consider that there's other companies that have cut inspection down, reduced inspection. We go the other way. We're constantly investing in more inspection, faster inspection a lot of times, so we get more automation, better CMMs. I've got a new CMM coming in a couple of weeks to try to improve and increase the amount of inspections we have. But that's the kind of stuff that you can justify when you build everything, as opposed to folks trying to trim down their investment in inspection technologies. And so I think that's one of the things I love about what Robinson's built is it's a self-reinforcing cycle of investment and modernization and limited drawbacks to that approach.
I love that. But you also talked about, talk about the culture of the company. You before you came on, you're like, hey, we outwork everybody. We run lean.
Right. That's right.
Talk about
here we are on Good Friday working, so we work more days. We have coordinated weeks off in the summers and in the Christmas season for shutdowns. But even during those periods, I've got a team of folks doing heavy lifting, rearranging factory, and doing preventative maintenance and doing inventory counts and things. So we've got a really, really strong workforce culture. When I started this job, one of the biggest changes to me was the world has gone down a path of mix of work from home, mix of flexible schedules is a thing that a lot of companies have gone to. You kind of come in when you want and you work the hours that you want, and you end when you get to the finish line. All that stuff I think is it's interesting. I think it's not good. And I think for manufacturing, it's unsustainable. So for us, we start every day, 7:30 for the office folks, and a lot of our shop folks come in 6:30, sometimes even earlier. And, I think they work longer hours. We work a lot of Saturdays as a team. We have, for most of the time I've been here, we work 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4 Saturdays to try to give people both the additional runway for overtime. They appreciate the extra overtime hours. And then on top of that, we just get a lot more done. So I think the culture is awesome here. Workforce culture is great. The team we have that leads the operations side of the house is really building a culture of hard work gets results. And so that's one of the things I think is it's like 52 years now in the making. Very, very hard. That's the deepest moat we have probably is the workforce culture.
Don't you think a lot of workers appreciate that though? Come in, we know what the expectation is. We're all going to work hard. We're going to produce a lot of good stuff. and then we'll enjoy the fruits of our labor.
That's right. And there's other little things that help reinforce that. I mean, for employees, when they come in, all their benefits are paid for the employee. And so a lot of folks are starting out their life with us, right? So they graduate from high school, they have no dependents, and they're just, an individual person, men and women both. And they come in and they have all their benefits covered. And that is the type of thing that simplifies their life and lets them focus in on finding themselves, finding their career. They get on the job training most of the time. A lot of our folks come in without any direct training. They might have worked with their parents in a shop, or they might have done customer service, or might have done inventory somewhere. We get a lot of people out of retail, a lot of people out of various consumer businesses. HVAC, for example, builds good mechanics. Auto mechanics used to be great, but honestly, nowadays auto mechanics don't do the same turning of wrenches they used to do. So I think it builds this really neat culture of the first 10 years of someone's career. They can move through several jobs with us to learn whether they like one building or another, or one type of work or another. And they can build long careers. We have a lot of folks now that are celebrating their 40th this year, and a lot of folks each year they're hitting 20 and 30. And so it's a really neat culture to be a part of.
Did you find it hard coming, obviously, family run company, the Robinson, Frank, highly respected business owner.
Yeah.
Did you find walking into his shoes a little bit,
yeah,
was that a challenge? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it is a challenge. I think strong founders in particular, those who've reached the promised land, and Frank has. I mean, Frank did. He is an American dream, right? That he had a dream, a vision from his earlier career, and he built it exactly what he wanted, and he achieved all those goals with lots of challenges. I mean, lots of downturns in the economy, lots of headwinds in terms of the challenges in the early fleet safety, and all that stuff. And he overcame all of that adversity. So it's a huge. No one can fill Frank's shoes. That's for sure. So when I walked in, I was like, the main goal here is to take that foundation he built and there's areas that he would never have anticipated. Things like avionics, for example. He was a big resistor to the idea of putting glass cockpits in aircraft. He thought, focus on the fundamentals, and there should be eyes should be out in this VFR aircraft. Keep your eyes out. All true, but the world has shifted, and I think it's a mix of reasons why. And so it is important for us to have those things. So we have to modernize and do some things that I think Frank would not have truly appreciated. But a lot of it, I think, the North Star is still Frank's vision, the Robinson vision. The work we do with our dealers and service centers is a heavy testament to how he viewed a worldwide product. And he was a prophet in that in respects, because how to be successful in every country on the planet like we are is not easy. And to do that for some of the other OEMs, they try to get they parachute people in temporarily, and then they leave, and they kind of create these I'll say US centric lines of thinking, versus for us, we want to be local. We want to have partners in regions, dealers and service centers. And that's been really, really effective, as much as anything to do with our success as our dealer and service center network,
Yeah, I love it. How about the dealers? Did you have to, look, you're coming in and you're like, hey, I'm not going to make, at least, I'm going to make some adjustments, but it's not going to be massive. Did they need some,
they
they need some love?
They still do all the time. I mean, we have changed a lot of things to try to drive things like, for example, we really want to be better at managing warranty in a core process where they get money back for parts that at the end of their life, they send them back. Many of the components or the pieces of the gearboxes, the servo actuators can be reused. We want to make that process smooth and fast, because it isn't fast today. Sometimes that stuff is like horrendously long. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I'm putting myself in their shoes. So we've had some early wins, I think, to get them on board with the changes that we're making. Certainly new products excites everyone, and they know that we're investing in the business. And that wasn't what necessarily they felt 2 years ago, because they were wondering for themselves, well, what's my predecessor was, in his 60s, and they were like, well, what's the plan? Who's next? And how are we going to keep this business going? Now they have those questions resolved. So, but there's still huge things we have to go and improve, and we have to really help them with promoting the product in regions. We have to go and combat some of the bad information, the negative stories that are just not true. And in the past, both Frank and Kurt they didn't put a lot of emphasis on marketing or countering bad narratives. And that may have been fine when there was, printed newspapers on street corners and the like. Now it's social media. Now it ripples fast. Now so you'll see me active on social media. I comment on posts. I directly confront people who say things that are factually untrue. And I do that because I think that's what Frank would have done if he were born in this century, and I think that's what we need to be doing.
You and I were commenting on the same post. Somebody speculated on the mishap in New York and the Jesus nut. And I'm like, hey, look, guys, if you don't know, shut up.
Think about that. Like there's no disincentive for them to do that. And I think that's, unfortunately, where will this end, to me, is a really sad situation of in 10 years, if it's all about clicks and people are financially incentivized to just throw stuff on the wall and see what survives, and they get no detraction for saying things that are false. And again, it does have a side effect. This is destroying parts of the aerial tourism industry right now. It's having, significant pain for all of my customers for stuff that's completely false and just not a legitimate line of thinking. So I struggle with it. I think one of the things is an interesting existential question for our industry is there's a lot of industry groups. A lot of industry groups have been trained over 70 years to advocate to DC and to host galas and to do things. Those are important parts of the tool sets. But somebody needs an industry group that is confronting social media and the social media frontier of what is the narrative of our industry outwardly, and no one's doing that. And so I look for allies, partners, maybe a future industry group to start up and say, we are going to be, truth tellers for general aviation, for, helicopters. You can pick your group, and I'll certainly back them. I'll lead the charge, but we got to have modern industry groups that help drive that in a different direction than currently, otherwise podcasters will win. And
it drives me nuts. I mean, I see it all the time too. There's some reporter has they know how to spell airplane and that's about it. And they're commenting on the reason behind some mishap. And I'm like, look, there could be a gajillion reasons.
Right.
Maybe just
wait a little bit. And instead they could talk about why they wait, and like just a great opportunity to talk to people about the NTSB processes and what that means. Bring somebody on who's a retired NTSB official and say, let's talk about why this takes so long. Why is it a year or two sometimes for these things to really get processed right? And unfortunately, people are just so expecting it to be like, a crime scene, and they just, we'll know who's the guilty party within a few months or a few days.
Well, if you remember the RJ crash up in Toronto, the RJ mishap,
right?
Somebody wrote me about, just texted me something. My immediate response back was, let's figure out, a windy day, challenging day, but let's talk about what right. The airplane was intact. That talks about certification efforts. That talks about,
to me, that's an incredible testament. That was never tested for that type of an unusual, role and impact.
So
incredible.
I love it. So, all right, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about, you made a big investment in Ascent Aerosystems. Peter Fuchs is talk about how you're going to invent, or how you're going to integrate the drone into what has been a historically successful helicopter.
Oh man, it's so much fun because originally when they came visit us, we were talking about this vision I had of accelerated search and rescue for law enforcement. We have a lot of great law enforcement customers. I've got a big mat over here for Polk County Sheriff, a nice reminder of one of our most important customers. And they do a lot of helping of finding missing persons, children that get lost in the central part of Florida, folks that are disabled adults that wander off from their care, high risk, time sensitive applications of vertical lift, and nothing finds a missing person like a helicopter. So they do that every week. They got some critical missions for that. And actually they dispatched, I was there a couple weeks back for Sun and Fun, and they dispatched while we were there. They're like, I got to go. And one of them took off and was helping to find a person who had run away. So that mission was the original reason why we even talked to Ascent, was we liked the form factor of their design. We thought it was air launchable, which it is, and it's been launched in fixed wing and from cars and from unmanned boats and all kinds of things. So it is perfect for a payload to be launched and then to integrate with a search and rescue mission, find something of value fast. So I think that was what introduced us. And then as we got along, like culturally very similar, They ran their business very tight. Peter's a great business person, and so he kept the business very healthy despite many challenging things. And the drone business is not easy, so they had lots of headwinds and things over the years. But run well, great talent, engineering first, product first. Not done a lot in marketing. Not done a lot to confront the fact that everyone's flying quads that frankly are not good in comparison to this design architecture. And it's a little helicopter. Like literally, the parts we build blades here, we build swash blades here. We can make a larger version of that architecture instantly. And we can build one that's 150 pounds, 250 pounds, whatever size we want. We can build them all here because we have the same basic capabilities here. And so we started to hatch this idea of collaboration. And then eventually it became obvious, let's buy them. And one of the things that pushed us over the edge was this idea. I studied the market much more closely. The thing that actually is holding back US manufacturing for drones most is assured production capability. The ability for someone to come to you and say, I would like to buy 1,000 of these right now. Oh, and also, I need assurance that in a year I can buy another 1,000. The answer is like, well, I don't know if we're going to be here. And can you buy it all up front? And like, these are all things that small businesses with difficult finances do. We are committed to this. And so we have parts on the shelf now. We're building about 10 a week of the Spirit, the 13.5 pound in Torrance in this building right behind me. And those we are a combination of existing customers and demand that we have to fulfill, but also putting them on the shelf. And the beauty of the architecture is the flying part is about this big, and it's 4 blades, 2 speed controllers, 2 servos, a swash plate, a power core, and a brain, a chipset and board. All that stuff. Then you are simply modularly attaching payload battery radios so that you have mission capable stuff out in the world. And so customers can buy the flying bit, the helicopter, and then they can add the other pieces really easily. And it's software enableable, and it's controllable by every type of ground control or custom control or, a bunch of off the shelf controls. So it's got all the hallmarks that I like of building a platform. So it's very similar to our helicopters. It is a platform, in this case, a platform for a different mission, but not so different. And, we're already having lots of discussions with folks where, there's big oil and gas companies that buy air assets for certain parts of their infrastructure patrols, and they buy, unmanned assets from a whole different supply chain and company, and they don't really collaborate. Many of those are starting to see that they can combine their back office, so they have one group that buys and operates, and they can have the same CONOPS, same kind of, ops manuals and ops specs and things like that. They can have those commonized, and we can be the provider of that because that's the capabilities of our helicopters, manned helicopters, and our unmanned small helicopters. And so that's the unlock, I think, that's really valuable. And, when the defense applications are a part of this, of course, there's a need to provide, in my mind, deterrent on the shelf and available supply and industrial base to deter our adversaries. Now, no one wants war. I definitely don't love the fact that, like, in the world, there's incentives for people to have wars. I think that's terrible. My objective here is to provide enough credible production capability of these unmanned assets. If they figure into the defense infrastructure, then at least it deters adversaries from conflict. And I think that's a secondary goal, and it's certainly I think it's a big part of the future, but just a piece of it. So yeah, so that's kind of the thinking, and they are super high performance, really incredible technology, way better than quads. Quads are like, I don't know, to me it's like horse and buggy versus the modern car to me. So it's a whole different animal.
What kind of airtime, what kind of flying time can you get out of one of those?
Yeah, so it depends on the battery selection you use, but like we easily go 35 to 55 minutes, and some of the bigger ones can go longer. And it depends too. Some folks have used them in one-way missions, so the things that don't come back, and they can put thermal batteries in, they can go longer. And the nice thing about the modular setup is all that technology can change, as the investments in batteries continue, which is great because it has an overlap with my electrification work on the helicopter side. So, we've got all the infrastructure here to actually weld the batteries, to weld the cells together, to build the modules and the actual battery packs for the drones. That is the same skill set that I need to do for large battery modules and cells and packs for the future electric, hybrid, and hydrogen fuel cell powered helicopters for manned purposes. So it's a great connection of the various pieces. And later this year, we'll be able to show a much more clear vision of the manned unmanned teaming piece of this that I do think is a really cool unlock for, I mentioned search and rescue. It's another one for fire. Fire is a really big one, but there's a lot of missions. I think that down the road, counter UAS is another one that's quite attractive, where you could see one of our low cost R66s, unmanned perhaps, fly, base security for harbors, missile bases, Air Force bases, whatever, and they can fly patrol endlessly. And then if they see incoming, they deploy, 6, 10, 12 of these spirits. Those spirits each can take 20, 40, 60 units down. So you have a iron curtain of
Iron Dome over Air Force Base.
That's right. And it's deployable. It's all in one little unit. You just load it up in a helicopter and put it and it ships easy in a crate, and you just deploy it. So that capability is, it's super cheap too. Like when you compare what people are throwing at, small drones, that whole thing is probably less than one cruise missile, so.
I love it. It's I love the whole theme. So last question, and I'll let you go for the day. It revolves around you. Being, CEO of a company, it can be lonely at the top. Who do you?
Yeah, it sure is.
It's always lonely at the top.
Yeah.
Who do you reach out to? Who do you reach out to when you bounce something off? Who are the people that you reach out to for? Advice, or your board, or is it your board, or is it some?
Well, so my board is good, but I've got a couple of great board members that are current executives, have been executives in similar, kind of fast growing companies. So they provide great feedback. Brian, who I won't give his name, but Brian is one of my board members I reach out to a lot. We also have, I mentioned Linda O'Brien, who was one of my very first mentors in my years at Bell, and is still a phenomenal executive and sounding board. Don't get to talk to her as much as I used to, but we're both busy as you can imagine. But when I need it, I know she's there. I can reach out to her. I had a great CEO, John Garrison, who was Army Ranger and Harvard Business trained professional before he led Bell Helicopter during my years. I can reach out to him. I spoke with him after I took this role, and so I've had some great folks there, and some of our customers too here that, after they got to know me in the first year I was here, kind of in the incognito mode before I took over the role. It was great because they could see the writing. They were like, "You're going to take that role, aren't you?" And so they knew that was why I had joined to begin with, and they had provided great counsel. So Robinson is a network of some of the most successful business people in the world. We have NASCAR racers, we have musicians, we have Fortune 500 CEOs, we have Congress people. All our customers flying everywhere in the world. It is incredible that is a resource to me when I need it. So it's a neat little foundation that our humble little product has provided to our leadership. So pretty great.
It's really nice to have smart customers, isn't it?
Oh, it's awesome. It's sometimes very, very exhausting. I'll tell you, it's probably the hardest challenge. Is my style is to be ultra available to our customers. So I get messages around the clock, texts, WhatsApps, calls, emails, all that. And I want to be accessible to them. And I have not reached the limit yet. But it's important that that's part of what I'm staffing my team and bringing in new leaders and folks to the organization. I screen for that. Can they be as responsive as me? Because they are a reflection of me. And so, a part of that, of having smart customers, is they have expectations, and they're fair expectations, but we have to actually answer the phone, reply to the email. Do not let days go by. And I sometimes fall short of my own expectations of that, but it's a big part of how I think about leadership in this global 10,500 plus stakeholder, world.
Well, they also offer good suggestions too.
100%. I mean, it's incredible the things that the blinders you have, and so you hear
coming from the business aviation world. Your customers, they can be vocal, but they come up with some great ideas too. Oh wow, never thought about that. So it's awesome.
Absolutely.
Hey, thank you for coming on today. I appreciate the hour that we've spent together.
Yeah, I appreciate it too. Great discussion. Hope to do it again soon. So thanks, Craig. Appreciate it.
I look forward to having you back on. You got to promise that.
I will.